What's up, guys? Welcome back to Deeper Dive CFB. Today we're going to be previewing Week 10 of college football. First, I'm going to go through ESPN College Pick'em like I have been, giving y'all my 10 picks there. And then I'm going to throw in a few additional games that Pick'em left out. Just before we get started, be sure to check the description below. I'll have time markers there so y'all can navigate your way easily through this video. And with that, guys, let's get right into it.
Yeah, and I'll be right here in my spot with a little more cash than I already got. Tripping off you because you had your shot with my skin tan.
Alright, guys, so like I said, we are going to be doing ESPN College Pick'em. That's something that I've been consistent with. I haven't put out videos the last few weeks. I did record them, just struggled to find the time to edit them, so my apologies on that. Like I said, I am going to have more time to do that now, so I'll certainly have these previews out for you this weekend in the future. But one thing that I am going to add this week is just some of my own games. As we all know, there's definitely more than 10 good games in college football a week with good storylines around them and things that I think that we should all note as we head into the week. So I am going to put some of that out there for y'all, but we are going to get started with Pick'em. And like I said, we'll have that stuff at the end. So let's get right into it, guys. All right, guys, with my 1-point pick, I've got USC upsetting the Oregon Ducks at home. I promise y'all, I'm really not an Oregon hater. I know I picked against them the last 3 weeks, but, certainly those games were close. And some of those points I made about, why I thought Washington and Washington State were going to upset them, definitely came true. I thought Washington and Jacob Eason came out and ready to play. They were up by 10 heading to the fourth quarter, and give Justin Herbert credit. He led them to a comeback victory. And then, same thing last week. Washington State, Anthony Gordon led the Cougars to a 1-point lead with 1 minute to go, and Justin Herbert came up clutch again. I just think in this one, guys, I think Keaton Slovis is playing too good of football. At over 400 yards last week. He's starting to take care of the football a little bit more. Since the BYU game where he had 3 and USC lost out on the road to BYU, he's only had 1 pick, and it came last week. I think Keaton Slovis is really starting to get in a roll. And Clay Helton's got to be ecstatic right now. JT Daniels goes down with an injury. And this true freshman 3-star quarterback, is kind of thrown into the fire. Keaton Slovis has certainly responded very well, and I think he's going to have another good game this week. And like I said, in the previous 2 games, the Oregon defense has started to slip a little bit. Have played good offenses in Washington and Washington State. I think USC is right on that level. If so many playmakers on the outside, Pittman had a big week last week, and so this is one of those gut-feeling picks as well, and I do have it at my 1-point confidence for a reason. I mean, it's certainly an upset pick. I think it's going to be close, but I think USC is going to be able to squeak past a win over Oregon. Next, with my 2-point pick, I've got Florida State beating Miami in a big rivalry game at home. This is one of those games that's certainly a toss-up. Both teams have kind of had their ups and downs, mostly downs throughout this year. Both teams do have quarterback issues. Starting with Miami, started the year with Jaron Williams, and he was actually playing really good football until they played Virginia Tech, and he had 3 first-quarter interceptions. We haven't really seen much of him since, but it actually came out today. I'm filming this on Wednesday. Jaron Williams is going to get the start against Florida State on the road. So obviously Manny Diaz is seeing something there. I think at the end of the day, that is the right decision. I think Jaron Williams was playing good football to start the year, and he had 1 bad quarter of football. I mean, he's a freshman. But we really haven't seen anything out of N'Kosi Perry that suggests that he's going to be able to go on the road and beat Florida State. The reason I like Florida State in this one is they do have a little bit more momentum coming off a big win against Syracuse where they won 35-17. One thing to note, Cam Akers has had a great year. 5-star running back out of high school. He's now a junior. And it's unfortunate for him. He just hasn't had very good teams around him. But Cam Akers has been a huge bright spot for Florida State. He already has 917 yards on the ground and 12 touchdowns. So, like I said, certainly making a big impact. I think their run game is a little bit more solid than Miami. And at the end of the day, like I said, both these teams are pretty even. So I think the edge is going to go to the home team in this one. Like I said, it's a rivalry game, so both teams are going to have tons of motivation to play. At the end of the day, with Akers, I think the Seminoles are going to squeak out a close one in a huge rivalry game. Next, guys, with my 3-point pick and what's for sure the game of the week, College Game Day is going to be in Memphis. I've got the Tigers defending their home turf and beating SMU, ruining SMU's undefeated streak. There's obviously a reason that College Game Day picked to go to this one over Georgia versus Florida. You have 2 teams from the American Conference who have both beaten Power 5 opponents this year, with SMU going on the road to beat TCU and then Memphis beating Ole Miss in the opener. And this game has huge implications surrounding the fact which Group of 5 school is going to be able to make a New Year's Six bowl. And just looking at this matchup, these teams are very evenly matched. You have Shane Buechele for SMU, who's transferred from Texas. I've seen him play a lot of football. And at the end of the day, this guy's a stud. He has 2,300 yards passing this year, 23 touchdowns, coming from a Big 12 school, playing big-time football. Coming down to a little bit lower level, and he's dominated to this point. And then as for Memphis, their quarterback Brady White's also a Power 5 transfer, came from Arizona State. Didn't really play much there, but certainly gained that experience of playing at a big time school. Just like Buechele, over 20 touchdowns, over 2,000 yards passing to this point. So the story around those quarterbacks certainly makes this a big game. But aside from the quarterbacks, both these teams also have elite playmakers who have also led them to this point as well. Starting with SMU, running back Xavier Jones almost has 900 yards with 14 touchdowns. They have 2 good receivers, Reggie Robertson and James Prochet. And then Memphis is running back and Kenneth Gainwell. Seen this guy play a few times, and this guy's a stud. Probably one of the most underrated players in the country. He's almost at 1,000 yards rushing on the year. And then DeMonte Coxey, receiver for Memphis. He has over 500 yards receiving so far. Been a huge threat for Brady White this year. At the end of the day, though, I think this is such an evenly matched game. I think all the hype is going to be around Memphis this week, with game day being there. This being a night game, it's going to be the primetime game on ABC on Saturday night. I think there's going to be so much hype and momentum towards Memphis. I think it's going to be hard for SMU to overcome that. You can't really go wrong either way. I think both teams are really solid, but being both 8-0 and 7-1 have obviously put themselves in a good position late in the year in the month of November. And like I mentioned, this game is going to have huge implications on which Group of 5 school is going to make the New Year's Six. And I think with Memphis beating SMU in this one, as I'm predicting, I think they'll be right up there with Appalachian State after this game as far as, top 2 Group of 5 teams in the country. But like I said, guys, I've got Memphis winning this game in this one, so I'm going to go with the Tigers in this one. Next, guys, in my 4-point pick, I've got Georgia beating Florida in a big rivalry game and remaining alive in the playoff talk. If you would have asked me about this game 3 weeks ago, I would have said Georgia all the way. But now that Georgia started to kind of come down to earth a little bit, this game was actually very hard to pick for me. Georgia obviously laid an egg against South Carolina and lost that game. But we haven't really been able to see them play in a fair environment since then. The only game since then was against Kentucky. And anybody who watched that game knows that the conditions played a major factor. Very sloppy night in Athens. And I think you have to give them a little bit of a pass on that, playing in those tough conditions. But at the end of the day, I'm going to give Georgia the benefit of the doubt. Jake Fromm's the guy who's led his team to the national championship, made to the Sugar Bowl last year. So this guy certainly knows how to win big games and put his team in position to be in a good spot at the end of the year. So I am going to give him the benefit of the doubt in this one. Kyle Trask has been a huge surprise for Florida this year. One thing to note is, yes, they went on the road and beat South Carolina in their last game, but definitely aided by the refs. Trask made some huge mistakes that ended up being negated by South Carolina penalties. So I just wanted to note, while Florida did beat South Carolina, it wasn't exactly a pretty win. It wasn't exactly a fair win, you might say. I know Will Muschamp was really mad about that, and all the South Carolina fans were definitely mad about that too. But nevertheless, Kyle Trask has been a great surprise this year. He has a great running back in LaMichael Pirine. I think Florida is so close to being back on Georgia's level. Dan Mullen's definitely got the Gators trending in the right direction. They've had a great year. Like I said, they're 7-1. But at the end of the day, I think Georgia's just a little bit ahead of the curve in this one, and that's why I'm going to go with the Bulldogs. With my 5-point pick, guys, I've got BYU going on the road and beating Utah State. Some people are going to look at BYU's record and say, okay, they're 3-4. Why should I pick them to go on the road and beat Utah State? But you actually have to go and look at the schedule. I mean, first 4 weeks were very tough for them. They opened against Utah, who we've seen dominate as of late. They went on the road to Tennessee and actually won that game. They hosted USC at home and actually won that game. And then they went on the road to Washington and got blown out. But, 4 really tough opponents to start the year. They're all Power 5, and they're all, pretty good Power 5s, very brand-name programs. Not to mention that they've also played Boise State this year, and they actually won that game. That was the last game they played. So that's a big reason why I am going with BYU in this one. And I'm not even saying that the Utah State hasn't played anybody either. They've played at Wake Forest. They played at LSU, so they played their Power 5 games as well. But when you really look at things, Baylor Romney, quarterback for BYU, has really started to come on as of late. Like I said, coming off a huge win against Boise State at home. I think they're going to have a lot of juice under them, a lot of momentum, so that's why I'm going to go with BYU in this one. Next, guys, with my 6-point pick, I've got Oklahoma State beating TCU at home and getting bowl eligible. Most weeks, guys, this would be much lower on the confidence poll, but with some tough games this week, that's why you're seeing this game as my 6-point pick. Both these teams certainly coming off huge wins. For TCU beating Texas at home in a game they really dominated in the second half. Watching that game and seeing TCU's defense, Gary Patterson is certainly a defensive wizard. The reason I am going to go with Oklahoma State, though, is I think Oklahoma State just has so many weapons at their disposal. Starting with quarterback Spencer Sanders, still very young, and saw him struggle with turnovers earlier in the year. That really handicapped the Cowboys, but he only had 1 turnover last week. I think this being a home game, you have an easier environment to try to take care of the football. But I've said it time and time and again. Chuba Hubbard, the Oklahoma State running back, and Tylan Wallace, their receiver, are both elite college football players. Mike Gundy's certainly not afraid to call Chuba Hubbard's number. There have been many games this year where he's had 30 to 35 carries. Tylan Wallace is great at making plays in space. And at the end of the day, going on the road, beating a solid Iowa State team in Ames, Iowa, which is a very tough place to play. I think coming back home to play in Boone-Pickens Stadium, they're going to have a lot of confidence coming off last week's upset win. TCU certainly going to have a lot of confidence too, beating a blue blood program like Texas. It's going to be a close game, don't get me wrong. Seeing Max Duggan, the TCU quarterback who's also a freshman, play last week, he certainly has a lot of potential. At the end of the day, though, he's proven that he can go on the road and win these type of games. Going on the road to both Iowa State and Kansas State, not able to produce much offense in that one. I think Duggan's going to play better, but at the end of the day, Cowboys got too much talent. I'm going to go with Oklahoma State in this one. Next, guys, with my 7-point pick, I've got Utah continuing their streak of dominance, and I have them going on the road and beating Washington. I've shown a lot of love towards the Huskies this year. Picked them against Cal, picked them against Oregon, lost both those games for me. Also lost a bad one to Stanford that's really inexcusable. I think at some point you got to hold them accountable. I think they got so much talent, a great talented quarterback in Jacob Eason, and a solid run game with Stephen Ahmed. But at the end of the day, they haven't produced consistently. So just for me picking this game, Washington hasn't given me enough reason to go with them in this one over a Utah team who's looked really good this year. I mean, Utah, I put out the stat a million times, really dominated their last 4 games. I'm not saying they're not going to deal with adversity. I think Washington's going to play their game. They have enough talent to where they can keep this game close. But I think Tyler Huntley, Zach Moss, who graded out at 93 out of 100, which is exceptional. Top running back statistically in the Pac-12. I think they have enough weapons to go and win this game, but they have a lot of motivation too. I mean, like I've said, received a lot of hype coming into the year from a lot of trusted people in college football. I think we're starting to see why, and I think Utah is going to be able to execute enough on the road. Tough environment in Seattle, but I think the Utes certainly pull out a victory in this one. Next, guys, with my 8-point pick, I've got North Carolina beating Virginia at home and distancing themselves as the number 1 team in the ACC Coastal. If y'all have watched any of my videos, y'all know I'm not bought into Virginia at all. I think they played too many close games against not very good opponents. Dang near got upset by Florida State at home when everybody was hyping them up. Didn't really compete that much with Notre Dame. Lost last week against Louisville. At the end of the day, I think North Carolina's record does not display the type of football they've played this year. I mean, lost 21-20 against Clemson. They attempted a 2-point conversion to try to go win the game. Wasn't a very good play call. Lost a ton of other tough games too. 6 overtimes against Virginia Tech. Lost at Appalachian State late. So 4-4 could easily be 7-1 or 8-0 for the Tar Heels. Seeing obviously firsthand what Mac Brown can do for a program. I mean, won 10 games at Texas 10 years in a row. Certainly one of the best coaches in college football. I think we've seen that culture change already in year 1. So, freshman quarterback Sam Howell has had his ups and downs, but he was a 4-star recruit for a reason, and he's starting as a true freshman for a reason. Definitely shows flashes, has great arm talent, very accurate quarterback. And at the end of the day, I think North Carolina is such a bought-in team. I know how well Mac Brown motivates his players, and being in the ACC Coastal, which I mentioned, is so wide open. Virginia, coming off a loss to Louisville, where Malik Cunningham, quarterback for Louisville, didn't really display anything in the passing game. I think Sam Howell is going to be a true upgrade from that, and that's why I'm going with the Tar Heels in this one at home, guys. Next, guys, with my 9-point pick, I've got Wake Forest beating North Carolina State big at home and improving to 7-1. Really not much to analyze in this one, guys. I think Wake Forest is a really good football team, benefiting off a weak year in the ACC. North Carolina State is just not a good football team, guys. Went on the road and lost to West Virginia by 17. Who I've seen play. West Virginia is nowhere close to being a good football team, so not being able to compete in that game doesn't give me too much confidence to pick them there. Got blown out at Florida State. We're only able to put 13 points up in that one. They only beat Syracuse 16-10, getting blown out by Boston College on the road in their last game. So North Carolina State, it just gives me absolutely zero reason to pick them in this one on the road against a team in Wake Forest who has looked good. Wake Forest's only loss was in a crazy game against Louisville. It was 62-59. But other than that, have definitely gotten the job done. Really hasn't been pretty. They only beat Boston College by 3. They only beat Florida State by 2. So I'm not saying Wake Forest is some elite football team, but I think they're certainly a huge step above North Carolina State. I think at home in this one, 6-1, like I said. Still having to play Clemson, technically, they still control their own destiny in the ACC Atlantic. So Wake Forest is going to come out ready to play in this one, and they're going to have no problem beating North Carolina State. And last, guys, on my 10-point pick, I've got Michigan going on the road and beating Maryland. Shouldn't have any problem in this one. Michigan's offense certainly looked great last week. Really started to incorporate Hassan Haskins more. He had a great game. In addition to Zach Charbonnet, who's been solid throughout this whole year. Shea Patterson, like I said, he's not going to blow you away. That's just not how the season is developed. Maybe next year he can start to take that next step. But right now, the Wolverines don't really need him to play elite. Going up against Maryland, who started off the year looking great offensively. Put up 77 against Howard and put up 63 against Syracuse. The team I was really high on after 2 weeks, but have quickly come down to earth, losing their last 3 games. All conference games against Purdue, Minnesota, and Indiana. Just to note, they also got blown out 59-0 by Penn State, while Michigan lost by a touchdown and really had a chance to force overtime in that game. So like I said, guys, part of picking an upset pick is the other team being able to convince you that they have enough evidence to why you would make that pick. Just like NC State against Wake Forest, there's none in this game. Maryland has no momentum heading into the game. Quarterback issue is certainly there, while Michigan's coming off a big win against Notre Dame when their offense finally started to come together. This is a perfect game to put in my 10 confidence because I have no doubt Michigan's going to go on the road and handle Maryland pretty easily. So that's going to wrap it up for College Pick'em, guys. But like I said, there's still additional games that I do want to touch on. I think definitely worth previewing heading into Week 10. First one being Virginia Tech going on the road to play Notre Dame. Notre Dame opens as a 17.5-point favorite. This game is going to be at 2:30 Eastern on NBC. Saying Virginia Tech has won their last 3 games, including on the road at Miami. and then beating North Carolina in that 6 overtime thriller. Meanwhile, Notre Dame's coming off an embarrassing loss where their quarterback Ian Book, who coming off a big year last year, thought no way he was going to get benched. Ended up being benched in the fourth quarter. Should start in this one. That's not the issue, but just a confidence thing in this one, guys. Really embarrassed last week against Michigan. Notre Dame, because they're not in a conference, has always had trouble convincing people that they're actually good. So they essentially put a lot of pressure on themselves to when they do play these primetime games, they just mean that much more because they're not in a conference. They don't have that consistency throughout their schedule. We saw that pressure kind of get to them a little bit. I mean, did play Georgia very close earlier in the year. I think that was a game, though, nobody was really expecting Notre Dame to go into Athens and beat Georgia. And they obviously played really well, lost 23-17. I think that was a game where they kind of, took a we have nothing to lose mentality. But certainly losing to Michigan on the road like they did, that's the type of game, especially considering the way Michigan has looked at times this year. The Irish faithful certainly expect to win. So just be aware of a possible letdown this week from Notre Dame. I think one other thing to consider also is Brian Kelly and maybe his job security. Certainly has done a good job in Notre Dame, all things considered. I mean, has had some success, has gone to a national championship game, has gone to a college football playoff last year, made New Year's Six Bowls, the Fiesta Bowl against Ohio State a few years ago. But just like some of these other blue blood programs, fans, boosters, the team itself, the athletic directors, they all expect you to win when you get in those big time moments. And Brian Kelly has certainly had a very hard time doing that. And one other thing to note, Urban Meyer, who's obviously kind of a free agent, not coaching this year. He was a former assistant at Notre Dame, and he actually wanted the job at Notre Dame right before he took the job at Florida. Urban Meyer, after the 2004 season, really built up the Utah program and was one of the hottest names on the coaching market. Like I said, former assistant at Notre Dame, grew up an Irish fan. Many people made that connection to Meyer wanting the job at Notre Dame. Notre Dame goes with Charlie Weiss. Urban Meyer gets a job at Florida, and the rest is history. But just something to note, with Urban wanting to get back in coaching again, I mean, he's definitely hinting it at times. Just something to consider that maybe that's the direction Notre Dame is looking to go towards. If I were Notre Dame, I would certainly want to pull the trigger and bring in a guy like Urban Meyer to kind of stabilize your program and be able to win those big games over the next 5-10 years. And then Urban Meyer, just like he did with Ryan Day, can kind of groom up a young assistant and kind of make him the next guy to take over that program. Certainly that's all speculation, but something I definitely thought was noteworthy. Long story short, Notre Dame needs to come out and bounce back this week. Next game I wanted to mention, guys, Kansas State's going to go on the road to Kansas. This game's going to be at 3:30 Eastern time on FS1. Les Miles has had Kansas playing really good football these last 2 weeks. Played really well at Texas, putting up 48 on the Texas defense. Lost on a last-second field goal, and then beating Texas Tech last week at home. Les Miles these last 2 weeks has certainly changed my mind. I wasn't bought into Les Miles because I thought he was too much of an old-school offensive mind for this era of college football. Just seeing him so many times at LSU, kind of run that I formation and really hold back that program. You have to give him a lot of credit, though. He's definitely opened up his mind. Kind of the newer approach of how you should run an offense in college football in 2019. Right before the Texas game, he fired his offensive coordinator, Les Koenig, and brought in Brent Dearman, who's a 34-year-old, very new age type of offensive coordinator. And I think it's a huge part of why Kansas has looked so good the last 2 weeks. I mean, Carter Stanley, who's obviously not a very talented quarterback, is looking like Johnny Unitas out there. So give a lot of credit to Les Miles. The reason I think this game is going to be so intriguing is because, one, it's a rivalry game. But secondly, with Kansas State being at an all-time high after upsetting Oklahoma, I think it'll certainly really show where Kansas is at in year one under Les Miles. Look good the last 2 weeks. Playing a team in Kansas State, like I said, who beat a top 5 team in Oklahoma. Certainly going to come into Lawrence very confident, playing good football themselves with Skylar Thompson, James Gilbert leading the offense. Defense was able to force some turnovers. So I think it's going to be interesting to see how Kansas is going to stack up week 3 under Brent Dearman. We'll see if they continue to take strides forward against a really good team in Kansas State. Next, guys, 2 SEC games that you should keep your eye on. One is Mississippi State at Arkansas. 2 programs right now that are really on the downturn. Starting with Mississippi State, Joe Moorhead, brought in from Penn State, was a big reason helping James Franklin rebuild Penn State into what it is now. But at the end of the day, Mississippi State has looked downright atrocious this year. They've lost 4 conference games in a row, lost all those games by at least 10 points. So Joe Moorhead in year 2, it's certainly not looking like it's working out. And then obviously Arkansas, 2-6 this year in year 2 under Chad Morris. Been another huge disappointment, like I said, bringing in Nick Starkel, who's a grad transfer from Texas A&M. He hasn't gotten the job done. So I think this one's going to be noteworthy just for the fact that, whoever loses this game is probably going to be on the hot seat, on the very hot seat, especially if Chad Morris loses this game at home to Mississippi State. Just being honest, I have no reason why you would even want to retain him. Year two, you should at least be seeing improvements. And this program seems to be only going downwards. So, big game for Chad Morris. We'll see if he can deliver. I'm going to pick Mississippi State, but it's not like Joe Moorhead's doing a great job at Mississippi State either. If Joe Moorhead goes on the road and loses to Arkansas, that'll be 5 losses in a row. They'll be sitting at 3-6. Is that really the guy you want? Dan Mullen left that program in really good shape, and Joe Moorhead really hasn't done a good job maintaining that. So it's going to be 4 o'clock Eastern on SEC Network. Certainly tune in, and we'll see how that one goes, and certainly talk about it in my Week 10 recap. Next game on the SEC I want to mention is Vanderbilt versus South Carolina. This game is going to kick off at 7:30 Eastern on SEC Network. Honestly, I don't know how Derek Mason still has his job. The only reason really being is that his last game, he was able to beat Kelly Bryant in Missouri. Big upset win. If they lose this game to South Carolina on the road, which I think they will, there's really no logical reason to bring him back. They might not fire him right after the game, but would really damage his chances of coming back after the year. And likewise, Will Muschamp, a big win against Georgia, but his team is still 3-5. Definitely had some injuries at quarterback that have affected them. Jake Bentley, their experienced quarterback, going down. But if Will Muschamp lost at home to Derek Mason and Vanderbilt, then I can only imagine the uproar that would be going on around the South Carolina community. So really a must-win game. I think these coaching carousels are noteworthy just because the SEC is held in such high regard where they might get a big-name coach. I think it is important to know which programs are searching for coaches. So that's why I wanted to mention those two. All right, guys, that wraps it up for my Week 10 preview. Thank you so much for watching, guys. I really appreciate it. I'm still thinking through other ideas as it pertains to other videos I might do throughout the week. So just bear with me there. I am going to start to create some consistency throughout the week and probably post 3 videos a week with my recap, my previews for the next week's games, and then one other video. I'm still trying to decide what that might be. So just bear with me there. As always, guys, please share with a friend. I'm trying to grow this page, and I would really appreciate that. Turn on your post notifications so y'all will be notified whenever I do post a new video. I don't want you to miss that. And then lastly, comment, guys. DM me on my Instagram or Twitter, or just comment below. I'm always willing to talk college football, guys. So with that, also like and subscribe, and thank you so much. We'll see you next time.